You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Now, we brought you on to talk about the big fight this past weekend with Tim Bradley controversially beating Manny Pacquiao for the title. What happened?
What happened is, I think Vegas happened, actually. There was, we have, being UFC fans, we see questionable decisions, fairly regularly. And part of that is because there are only 3 rounds. So it's kind of easy to screw up a 3-round decision. But in boxing, when you have 12 rounds, it's a little bit harder. But the judges at the Manny Pacquiao-Tim Bradley fight seemed to get it wrong, and wrong in a very bad way. Even the judge who scored the fight for Pacquiao, even his scorecard was a little head-scratching. Most of the people that I know, including myself, had Pacquiao winning the fight, running away. And I don't know if you guys saw Mike Sempervive's column on F4W, but he actually put together a list of all of the boxing writers, bloggers, experts who were online and who shared their scorecards. And there were something like 2 out of 50-something people who actually had the fight for Bradley. So quite the bad night there.
Yeah, I looked at a lot of the boxing scores the night of the fight itself from the people who were covering the fight or were live there, and I only saw one person who gave it 9-3, and that 9-3 was still for Pacquiao. Everybody else had him winning either 10 or 11 out of all 12 rounds. Yeah,
I had it 9-3, and part of that was because I thought in the last 3 rounds, Pacquiao really slowed down. I don't know if I would imagine he was just tired. He didn't seem to be in the greatest shape, the great Manny Pacquiao shape that we're used to seeing. And I thought, the last 3 rounds specifically, he slowed down. Some might say starting with the 8th, he probably slowed down a little bit. But it's even questionable for me to give those 3 rounds to Bradley. I kind of gave them to him because Pacquiao just wasn't stalking him as much, so Bradley looked a little smoother. He looked a little bit more of the controller of the ring there. But, if someone said it was 12-0, I would not have blinked, and that would have actually been a better score to me than anything close to Bradley winning the fight.
I was just going to say, it's not like the people who had Bradley winning even had him winning by a wide margin. The 2 judges had him 115-113, and the other had it 113-115. So it's even on the people who scored it as Bradley winning, it's not like they were saying he dominated the fight, and everybody else is saying Pacquiao dominated the fight. So it's kind of mind-boggling that everybody who wasn't there judging saw it as totally one way, and 2 out of the 3 judges saw it marginally the other.
Well, one of the things that a lot of fight fans do when you're watching the fight, they are of the opinion that the announcers really try to swing the opinion to the fighter who they want to win or who maybe they think are going to win. And in that case, if you were to listen to the announce team of Jim Lampley and Max Kellerman and Emmanuel Stewart, you would have thought, okay, Pacquiao is clearly winning this fight. Now, I agree, they do that sometimes for sure, but in this case, I was watching the fight in a place where it was a little hard to hear the announcing, so it's not like I was swayed all that much by the announcing because I could barely hear it. And all the people ringside, the people who had press credentials, it was probably 95% of them had Pacquiao winning clearly, and they didn't hear any of the announcing. So in that case, I get a little frustrated with that argument because lots of us were not paying attention to the announcing because either we couldn't hear it or there were people there live. So, that argument from the people who thought Bradley, was in control or was close or whatever, that argument does not fly with me at all. And the interesting thing to me is, Bradley started out, his strategy was he was waiting for Pacquiao to lunge. If you've ever watched Pacquiao's fights, there are times where he is off balance because he lunges so far in his attempt to land his left hand, and it looked like Bradley was like, okay, that's what I'm going to look for, and when he comes in, I'm going to throw a short left hook, and he did that a couple times. And then he saw how his left hand really didn't faze Pacquiao, and he kind of figured, okay, I may have to change strategy here because, I'm hitting him with good punches, and he's walking right through them. And, from round 4 to round 12, he really just, ran for the rest of the fight. So, even the people who said, Bradley gave Pacquiao a boxing lesson, or, Bradley controlled the ring, or, Bradley was leading making Manny look bad. Can you really do that when you are running and when every punch you throw, the guy who is hit smiles through it and laughs through it and just walks right through it? To me, that doesn't really mean a whole lot. And I look at punching power, and I look at prowess, and I look at how both fighters react to each other's punches. Those are the things to me that are really important. And, you could even look at the punch stats, and Pacquiao dominated the punch stats, and yet the naysayers are saying, I rewatched the fight and I counted the punches, and the guy who's doing the punch stats, was counting incorrectly. Whatever. The fact of the matter is, Timothy Bradley, really good guy to root for. In most cases, I would actually be rooting for him to win a fight. But he throws pillow soft punches, and you can't beat Manny Pacquiao throwing pillow soft punches. So to me, that's what it comes down to, the bottom line.
One more question. What did you think of the fact that immediately after this fight, when the judges' scores were announced, Vince McMahon started trending on Twitter?
Well, most of us who are also wrestling fans immediately started jokingly tweeting about Montreal. So that it didn't surprise me. When boxing, a lot of the bad press that boxing gets is for stuff like this, and then people start talking about the promoter is rigging the fight, and this is what Arum wanted. I think a lot of that is hogwash, because this fight, if I am to believe what the rumors are of what the pay-per-view buy rate is, it was one of Pacquiao's weaker performing fights in recent memory. So why would you want to rematch one of Pacquiao's weaker performing fights if generally rematches in this case of bad decisions don't necessarily do as good of business or more? The fights that do better business are the ones that are wars that, either guy can win and one guy gets, the better of the other, like Anderson Silva and Chael Sonnen. You can bet your bottom dollar that fight is going to do more in pay-per-view buys than the first fight.